Please note that this episode was recorded before the May 18th banned and restricted announcement. Rest assured, we'll be rejoicing over the Undercity Informer ban next episode. Now, without further ado, welcome to Eternal Horizons. Welcome to episode 11 of Eternal Horizons, a Magic the Gathering podcast where we look out on the Legacy format and beyond. My name is Jasper Murison-Bowie, or just Jasper, and I'm here with my good friend Francis Cooper, aka FGC. How's it going, Francis?
I'm doing well. It's been a busy few weeks for me, and the next few weeks will also be busy, so I'm happy we've found time to chat once again. How are you?
Yes, I'm all right. Everything is busy at the moment. I'm off to Prague for a wedding at the weekend, which I'm very much looking forward to. A good friend of mine is getting married, and that will be lovely. But in the meantime, there's Magic to talk about. This week, we will be catching up on a few Legacy tournaments that have happened, including the Legacy Cup at the Spotlight Series here in London, plus the European Legacy Masters qualifier that happened here. And you lent me a surprise deck for our local last week, which I think is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. But first, we had a follow-up question to our deck choice discussion from last episode. Don't worry if you haven't heard part one from last time, because I think this will work reasonably well as a standalone discussion as well. Our friend Jamie got in touch to ask about how to tech against the deck to beat, or how much to tech against it, or on the flip side, what to do if the deck you enjoy is also the deck to beat that weekend. And he added the note that Francis is probably better equipped to answer that question, which I think is very rude. Don't know what you're implying about my deck choices, Jamie. But he was also wondering about whether we make decisions differently depending on event size, location, online versus paper, and so on. And provided the helpful starting point of, for example, the presence of the 4X Candelabra deck in the current Legacy meta, or even the White Plume / Dungeoneer situation a few years ago. What are your thoughts on this, Francis? What do you do about the deck to beat?
I think the deck to beat might be something that is variable in how important it is, depending on what sort of event you're going to go to. So if I was going to be playing a Magic Online challenge, heaven forbid, then the impact of the deck to beat, meaning whatever's been doing the rounds, I suppose, in the leagues and challenges, will be quite high, right? It seems very likely that you would play against it, because the people who are playing those events are inclined to swap between decks and try and next level the other people around in the events. And they might be more comfortable doing that than people who have, say, a static paper collection. So the deck to beat, I say, has a higher impact on online events, for a starter. I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
I think that it just reminds me of what we were talking about last time, which is that there comes a point in a tournament where you might reasonably expect to face the deck to beat, but you also have to play the tournament where you don't play against that deck. Like if you tech too hard towards, say, beating in this meta tempo, or whatever, I mean, wherever the meta has sort of settled at the moment, but say it's tempo, and you then don't play against tempo, or you play against all the other decks that are trying to beat tempo, you may not get the results that you're looking for if you don't get that matchup. So I think there's a risk in assuming that you are well placed to tech against the top meta deck, because that assumption is predicated on the idea that everybody else hasn't also identified that that's the deck to beat and won't be doing things to counteract that. So I think that I would err on the side of, definitely wanting a clear plan, but certainly not over-adjusting towards beating a certain meta deck, unless you really know, like in a small environment, or even a closed environment or an open deck list environment, you really know that there's going to be so much of that deck. But I think that Legacy very rarely is like that. And in particular, the kinds of Legacy events that I would be most inclined to do more preparation for, which would be large paper events, because that for me is like the most exciting bit of playing big Legacy events are the paper ones. I don't think you can draw too many conclusions based on the meta that we have data about, which is the online meta, and how that's going to translate into the paper meta. I don't think the two things necessarily line up that well. And it helps to know the decks, the lists, because people do look at those. But I think people make their own deck choices based more on a range of factors than just this deck is the deck to beat.
Yeah, and I suppose you might come down to seeing what people have available in their collections as well, right? So more and more events are proxy, but if events aren't proxy, you have to take into account this aspect of these are the cards people own. They might bring, the best up-to-date version of blue-white control or tempo or dark ritual combo or something to do with Ancient Tomb or whatever, but that percentage of the metagame can only change so much, right? The example that's actually given here is 4 candles.
Yes.
As opposed to 4 candles. Not a lot of people have 4 Candelabra of Tornos, and
no.
If you are playing a non-proxy event, I would expect the number of people playing it would be vanishingly small, because I think those... Well, I saw one for sale in the room at the weekend. I saw someone buy it. It was 2,600 something, I think was the price advertised. I can't remember if it was euros or pounds or something, but...
Yeah, have you got a spare 10 plus grand to drop on 4 copies of Candelabra of Tornos to play the best, hypothetical, maybe best version of a deck? We don't even know if it's the best version of the deck. It's just the current flavor of it, right? So it's yeah, I agree. I think that obviously proxy metagames are different, but for a paper metagame, you have to take into account card availability, even though I think Legacy is maybe one of the easier formats to borrow cards for, just in terms of the willingness of the players lending stuff and the tight-knitness of the communities, the player, and so on. Still, I wouldn't necessarily expect to see many copies of a deck that has that level of restrictive cost attached. At the same time, as you said, most events are proxy now, so you may well see it. But what came to mind when you were talking just now about how you might see like the latest version of any given deck, Dark Ritual combo, blue-white, tempo, whatever, in my view, you're just as likely to see someone show up with the same build that they played like a decade ago and want to play all their old cards. Maybe not a literal decade, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't think that's just as likely, but there will be those people in the room, especially as the tournaments get bigger and bigger. I agree that something like an Eternal Weekend, a paper Eternal Weekend, is really hard to predict the actual metagame. You can talk, because contrary to maybe popular belief, the way that Magic Online challenges sculpt the next Magic Online challenge doesn't work quite the same at these larger paper events. You will get the legacy diehard, I play all the events, I follow the metagame, and they will say, oh, well, the best build of this deck is this, and we'll expect to see this percentage of it, and whatever. But, a good, 40% of people going might never have played Legacy or that year. Right? They might not have played since the prior year.
Or they might just not play online at all.
Exactly, and they don't care about that.
Yeah, and I think that there's, in a way, preparation is always going to be good on some level, but if you expect too much to see the results from online replicated in paper, you're liable to walk yourself into some traps of either thinking or of preparation where you go, oh, well, Energy never plays Solitude. Sorry, that's a callback. But, then you'll get blown out by that thing that someone might be playing. I think there's always a risk of overthinking a metagame. That can be as wrong as underthinking it.
Yeah. I suppose we've talked a bit about thinking about what the deck to beat might be and how it presents itself in an event. Jamie is specifically asking about how we tech against it if we were trying to. I suppose we were considering how much to tech against it.
Yes.
So, I think I would probably, for the most part, think about the decks that I have familiarity with and think about what might be better positioned against a handful of the most popular decks from that era, right? Like by that I mean like 6 months, right?
Yes.
What's been going on in the last 6 months? This deck was in this many events doing well, and so it will make that sort of grouping, and then I will look at the things that I like playing and think about what beats that and how I can tune to beat that grouping, and have a sideboarding plan for that and so on. But I probably wouldn't do more than that. It's just a sort of guide.
Yeah, I might make decisions about main deck versus sideboard cards where often you're faced with choices where you could flexibly interchange some main deck cards for some sideboard cards or vice versa. And those are the kinds of changes that I'd be looking to make on that kind of metagame call. If I'm feeling reasonably confident that like a tempo deck is the deck to beat, then I might like quote unquote pre-sideboard, but not heavily, just like a couple of cards to try and address that matchup. As long as I didn't feel like it was going to make me, lose too many points against the wider field. And I think it does also depend quite a bit on what meta archetype the deck to beat is. If it's the kind of archetype where, you're expecting a long and interactive game, then I might be less inclined to do too much to my main deck because I know that like the sideboarded games will give me a chance to leverage that, and there'll be just more back and forth in general. Whereas if the deck to beat is, say it was Oops All Spells, I'd probably be more inclined to do something main deck because of the contractionary pressure that a deck like that places on the game state. Or like if the deck to beat was Necrodominance, then I'm going to need to probably make decisions that give me a fighting chance in game one so that I'm not playing a game 3 on the draw that I have, that I have to win. You want to give yourself some shot to win those. But those meta games are not very common. And I guess maybe that's, partly where the White Plume Dungeoneer situation, White Plume Adventurer, Seasoned Dungeoneer initiative deck that Jamie also mentioned in his question maybe comes in, because that was a very linear, powerful deck that required you to have answers across multiple games very quickly, or you were just going to lose the game. And I think that, when you have a situation like that, and particularly if it's a new deck and it feels like it's done something that people haven't seen before, as I think Initiative did feel like it was just operating on a different power level axis to the other decks in the format. And so I think when that happens, when there's this breakout list of like, whoa, this is clearly going to get banned, and that does happen sometimes, you just know that something's going to get banned, that just does add to the sort of what we were saying before about, maybe that makes you think more about teching to beat it. And what do I look for in a card when it comes to teching to beat a deck like that? Well, targeted hate that can come into play early, or in the case of Initiative, I remember looking for, cards that are creatures and or cards that would let me push through to steal the initiative. Like the Painter deck at the time, I probably was, making sure that I had turn 1 creatures and then making sure that I had cheap removal that interacted favorably with Seasoned Dungeoneer. Like Rending Volley, for example. Thinking about specific scenarios.
There is a specific deck list that I built actually in that metagame for a showcase qualifier, in which I played Squadron Hawk. I'm really going to see if I can find the list. When this metagame existed, I thought to myself, and I'd qualified for the showcase qualifier. So first of all, I qualified playing Cephalid Breakfast, which does fulfill the criteria that you were saying. So you got to play with a deck that could ignore the fact that they had the initiative because you could kill them on turn 2, and their interaction, especially in game 1, was pretty poor. And then you could also play this sort of awkward tempo game where you'd have a Narcomoeba or a Nomad's Encore, and you just swords their initiative creature, and none of their lock pieces really did much by themselves. They'd needed 1 or 2 elements, so you could just force the second one and get your combo through. So that was one thing. But then I thought I'd go really hard for this qualifier, and I played a deck basically entirely designed to take the initiative and to keep it.
But did you play any initiative creatures yourself?
No, I played 0.
So it wasn't a deck entirely designed to take the initiative then?
Well, the two decks to beat were this initiative deck and blue-red tempo with expressive iteration, which is an interesting reference point for today's metagame in some ways.
Yes.
But I was playing, 14 creatures, 2 Snapcaster Mage, 4 Squadron Hawk, 4 Stoneforge Mystic, 1 Brazen Borrower, and 3 True Name Nemesis, which is really good at taking the initiative. And then you can forge onto your True Name Nemesis. That's really good. And then trap them. And then I was playing a bunch of Stifles. So when they tried to take the initiative back, I could stop them. And it was brilliant. It really worked very well. I think I beat initiative twice in that event. And I think sometimes you really can get paid off.
And how did the event overall go?
I came top 8 in the showcase qualifier. I didn't win. But
yeah, well, but that's definitely it paying off. And I think that speaks to something that I was thinking about as a general point about how to tech against things. A really useful construct for me when I'm thinking about building a sideboard or building a deck to beat another deck or a set of decks is to try and think through the kinds of game states and sequences that normally occur in a given matchup and what I would like my deck to be able to do in those sequences or game states. It's sort of a version of the classic Who's the Beatdown, but specifically addressing scenarios that I think might come up, which, the initiative is very easy to discuss in that respect because it's they play an initiative creature, what do? But those kinds of scenarios exist for other decks as well, in particular decks to beat. And I think that it's helpful to just do that kind of sequential thinking, I suppose.
Yeah. You want to think about at what point in the game can you take advantage of what they're doing most effectively within your own plan? Or if you are dedicating a plan to beating them, how can you do that most effectively whilst maintaining acceptable matchups elsewhere, which is what this blue-white deck was, I think. More of the latter than the former.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll put links to that list and any other lists discussed in the show notes. So if you want to go and look at 4 Squadron Hawk, I mean, what a banger of a card.
2022, 4 Squadron Hawk. It was a good time.
HawkBlade brackets initiative crusher is what you've just put that in the notes as, which I love. The flip side of the question, which maybe you'd like to just briefly touch on, is what to do if the deck that you enjoy is also the deck to beat. What's your approach to that way round?
Yeah, okay. So I can remember playing Miracles with Sensei's Divining Top at Eternal Weekend 2017, I want to say, just before Top got banned. And I think we were playing 5 blasts in the sideboard. At that point, 5 red elemental blast effects. So that
basically just for the mirror.
Yeah. And things like that are really inbred. I don't know if I've seen a top deck that has been quite so inbred since then.
Coronation Chicken Miracles.
Well, it's the best example I have because it certainly was the deck to beat and was inbred, and I was playing it. I think since then I have not often played what people might regard as the deck to beat. So it's difficult for me to say, but you're going to think about how you win mirrors and how much equity you can give up to win mirrors without hitting your win percentage elsewhere. Or another way of doing this, say if Zoo was the deck to beat, I know it's 2010 or something, and you're trying to play Wild Nicottle and Step Links. This is a very classic example. But to beat them, you might want to play Tarmogoyf and Knight of the Reliquary, right? You want to.
What about Woolly Thoktar, Francis?
Well, I don't think I've ever seen Woolly Thoktar in play in a game of Legacy.
It's bigger than Wild Nicottle.
That's
true. It doesn't die to Lightning Bolt.
But that is a way of thinking about it as well. If you want to win pseudo mirrors, I think at the moment maybe a better example is that there are 2 or more Demir lists, tempo, and there's one list that plays a bunch of Nethergoyfs and Mistress Baubles, and there's a different list that is more mid-range with Baragoyf, and the numbers skew either way. And I would assume that the Baragoyf list is there trying to sort of win grindy games versus tempo decks that are slightly smaller than them. And that's a very classic deck to beat cycle, I suppose. Eventually that deck will get too big and then someone can go under them by being super aggressive. So you want to think about dynamics like that, how to win mirrors without giving up equity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that those are really the two prongs of that, is like, you have the mirror, you know you're going to have to face the mirror, or you expect you're going to have to face the mirror, and you can probably make decisions that would favor you there, but you have the flip side of like, other people will be tech to beat you, and you may be able to do certain things to adjust your list to what hate people are bringing for your deck. So like, if, say it's the Miracles example, and everyone is bringing lots of red blasts because all your best threats are blue, is there like, are you maybe going to play an extra copy of Entreat or something to close out games more quickly before the red blast becomes relevant? That might be the kind of thing. Where do you come down on, like, would you rather beat the mirror or beat the field?
Depends on how inbred your metagame is. If the field is the mirror, I think that Miracles deck was like so far ahead of every other deck in the format that you didn't really care about beating anything other than the mirror. Yeah. You were so happy to face most decks, really.
Strawberry Shortcake?
That was tougher, but that deck played a million blasts, right?
Yeah.
So that makes
tons
a big
of
difference.
Blasts. And then I think, actually, this is a neat example, even if it is a bit dated now, but teching to beat the deck to beat, as it were, or vice versa, teching as the deck to beat, these aren't just limited to deck construction choices. It's not just about what's in your main deck, what's in your sideboard. It's also about, how do you approach that game? Are there things in your deck already that, if you play them in the right way, can give you an edge in that matchup? And so the dated example that I would use there is Imperial Recruiter in Strawberry Shortcake was mostly used to get your Painter Servants and try and combo off. But the classic play pattern that I've probably already mentioned on our short-lived podcast, and will probably mention again because I love it, is you'd Imperial Recruiter for another Imperial Recruiter, and you just keep that in hand, or you'd do that a few times, but you'd keep the last one in hand so that if they terminused, you could get them all back. And the way that Miracles was constructed at that time, Imperial Recruiter as a 1-1 that bought another 1-1 was like a fairly reasonable threat, because the only way to tidy them up was Terminus, and they couldn't afford to spend their swords on the Imperial Recruiters, and because you had other creatures that needed answering. So, it's those things that, like, it's a holistic thing. It's not just about deck construction choices. It's like, well, how do I leverage the elements that I have, and how do I decide on the role that I'm playing against this meta deck?
Yep, I would agree. I will say that the answer to the mirrors, where everyone had a million blasts, and also the answer to Imperial Recruiter, was Monastery Mentor. And you just didn't care about their 1-1s, and you just killed them. Yeah. Which was a relatively late development that everyone eventually came around to. But
presumably that also had like a knock-on effect on that, made you worse in certain other matchups, I would assume. I don't know. I mean, I remember finding that card extremely difficult to deal with as the Shortcake player. And so I was pretty dismayed when people started playing that card a bit more, because it was just like, okay, my plan doesn't work anymore. We're
really getting deep in here. But I would say that Monastery Mentor was maybe the beginning of the end for the deck, where you got to just... I think my preferred build was where you got to play this sort of prison infinite endgame deck, except versus things like Post or whatever. And then post board, you just could completely juke them, and they didn't know if you would or not. And often, so that they had to keep in their removal. If they didn't keep in their removal, you just kill them. If they did keep in their removal, then you could just kill them anyway. If you counterbots locked them, like, they couldn't kill your mentor anyway, it didn't matter. Or you could just, like, oh, you haven't played any spells in a couple of turns, I won't play my mentor out, I'll just brainstorm it away and draw a bunch of cards, and it won't matter. Like, you could just play a lot of games like that. Or, oh, you have a lot of abrupt decays, I know you're going to bring them in, I'll just sideboard out all my counterbalances, and I won't bring in my mentors, and I'll just entreat the angels for 6, and you'll have 2 abrupt decays in hand. Like, there were so many games. That deck was silly. Like, especially that. It was really a work of art by the end. And I think Monastery Mentor let you play that game really well, where you could just threaten a load of different plans. But This is a different conversation.
Yeah, we're getting slightly lost in the historical weeds here. But no, I mean, I think it's useful to talk about these things using kind of defunct examples because it teases out the sort of structural elements in a way where, it's a slightly less emotional, you don't have the same emotional responses anymore that you might have had when you're in the metagame as it stands at the moment. It's like, well, I feel X, Y, and Z way about this, but I think they're nice examples, if hopefully not too anachronistic, nostalgic, etc. But it does make me think what the last point that you made about sideboard dukes might be a topic for another day, but the whole concept of the duke and what it lets you do and the uncertainty that it creates, I think that is something that is more powerful from the deck to beat than not, because it relies on certain assumptions being made about information.
Yeah,
you assume that someone's going to know your list because you're playing like a popular list. That gives you a stronger position to do something unexpected in a curious kind of way. So that might be another sort of angle to think about, is like, well, if you have the option to have a duke as the deck to beat, that's probably going to be good in a way that the duke from a random deck that no one's ever seen is just as random as the deck itself. So it doesn't help you quite as much.
Would agree. Especially if you're teching for a big event and you can see a hole in the metagame where you think, I don't need these sideboard cards. I don't think people will bring this to this event, right? You're thinking about what people might bring. If you have a good feel for that and you can imagine a way to adjust your deck to counter what people commonly do, then that's obviously very effective.
For sure. Well, that was interesting to me, at least. I hope it was interesting to our dear listeners, and I hope that Jamie feels that we addressed his question. But thank you very much for the follow-up. And yeah, I would just say to anybody, if you have any questions, leave us a comment or drop us a message on Discord or wherever else, Blue Sky, Reddit, etc., etc., etc. You know where we are. Shall we move on to an event? I don't know which event you'd like to start with of the ones that we've both played recently.
I think the nicest way into this is through the secret deck list event.
The secret deck list. Yes. So the short story of that is that last week I was planning to come to Legacy, but I didn't have a deck assembled, and for various reasons, I didn't think I was going to be able to put one together in time. And Francis, you then kindly offered to build me a deck. And I think initially when you made that offer, you were like, oh, I can make a painter list for you to play. And you'll like that because you like playing painter. And I said, oh, well, it doesn't have to be painter. It can be whatever. And that just sort of spiraled into me playing a deck that I had not laid eyes upon until I drew my opening hand for round one of our local Legacy event last Thursday, which was highly entertaining. I really, really enjoyed doing that. I didn't know anything about the deck at all. You literally just handed me a deck box and I shuffled up and played. I didn't look at the sideboard. I didn't look at the 60. None of it. I just drew my 7 in round one. And if anyone is looking for a way to have some fun at a Legacy event, I would say that I can highly recommend having someone build you a deck and then just sitting down with it, because it was great. I had such a good evening. What deck did you build me, Francis?
It was a revisiting for me of something that I sort of built. It would be 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, which I called Sloth Depths, which is I thought.
Or Slep, I remember for sure.
Yeah. It's a deck which was maybe inspired by Lumbering Megasloth from Fallout. 10 green for an 8/8 with trample. It enters tapped, and the key bit is this costs 1 less to cast for each counter among players and permanents. So that obviously is a nice combination with Dark Depths.
Wait, hang on a minute. Does it say players and permanents, not just permanents you control?
Yeah, so if your opponent has Dark Depths,
if your opponent has 2 Moon Shadows in play, you can play it for 2 mana.
Oh yeah,
that
that's
actually
also true.
happened, but I didn't have the Sloth in hand. But like,
okay,
I could have played it. But yeah, actually, I did have. Wow. I actually cast a Sloth that game. That's crazy.
A buff
But I didn't
to Lumbering
realize.
Mega Sloth.
I know, that's wild. So Lumbering Mega Sloth, legacy powerhouse, obviously, which is why you had to read out what it does.
Well, I played this a lot when it was printed at some paper events, and I played some like non-sloth variants while Fallout was not on Magic Online because there was a bit of a delay.
Slothless.
But I thought this would be a really sloth. Wow! I thought this would be a really
slothless troll.
This would be a very fun deck to lend because it's really not a deck in the metagame, but it plays a lot of legacy power level cards. Right, you've got Elvish Reclaimer and Brainstorm and Force of Will and Crop Rotation, and notably Up the Beanstalk, which combos with Lumbering Mega Sloth. Right, you can play your 2-mana 8/8 and draw a card, and you can Force of Will and draw a card. That's less interesting, and obviously, because you want to play with Yavimaya and Dark Depths to make Lumbering Mega Sloth good, there's another 5-mana instant that works with Up the Beanstalk when your opponent has a forest and you have an island.
Submerge, baby. Four main deck Submerge. That is just... There was one in my opening hand in round 1, and I was like, oh dear Lord, what is happening?
Main deck Submerge.
Main deck Submerge. It was really good for me, actually. The main deck Submerges were good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, also, main deck Stifle.
Yes,
I guess because you're deathly afraid of Wasteland, and the new toy, which am I right in thinking this was part of the thought process for you that Petrified Hamlet's been printed, and you thought, okay, this deck can benefit from Petrified Hamlet?
Yeah, I mean, this was a Ghost Quarter or a Waste. I think it was a Wasteland in the previous version because I'm not playing any Needle effects, or you won't play any Needle effects. So, but I think if you're just hoping to name a key card, then you get a mana out of it as well. That's quite nice. So I wanted to see what you thought of that.
I was very impressed by Petrified Hamlet. I can see why it's good in the depths lists. Just the main thing that felt like a big cost in this deck, particularly being a Brainstorm deck as well, and a Crop Rotation deck to a certain extent. Obviously, it's nice to have access to that, but your land drops are at a premium, and you really want each of them, to make your combo happen, or one of your two combos, if we're going to count Lumbering Mega Sloth and Dark Depths as a combo. And I think that sometimes it feels a little awkward to play this land that doesn't generate colored mana if you don't have Yavimaya in play. So it doesn't cast your Mega Sloths, it doesn't cast your Brainstorms, it doesn't cast your Crop Rotations, it doesn't cast your Stifles. It does cast your Up the Beanstalks. It does let you cycle away your Lorien Revealed, which is another card that I think is really nice in a deck like this. But I guess that's also why there's only one copy in the deck. Like, I don't think you could easily support more than that.
I found it very hard to build a deck that plays 4 Hamlets. I did try playing like a mono green depths list, but it was just kind of clunky and slow.
Yeah.
You did raise Lorien. Lorien is there because you have so many like awkward Thespian stage hands where you just have colorless mana or non-green blue mana. Also, the deck is slightly light on blue cards. For Force of Will, you're just at 20, and it's in a pinch a 5-mana draw 4 with Of the Beanstalk in play, which everyone loves that. So
that unsurprisingly did not come up for me in the 4 matches that I played with this deck. I didn't really find myself regularly at like 5 mana for casting Lorien Revealed because you don't have much interaction. You've got 4 force and you've got your Stifles and your Submerges, but the way you have to end the game, basically, Lumbering Mega Sloth notwithstanding, is Thespian Stage Dark Depths, which obviously costs you mana and lands, and therefore, like, it's at odds with the casting Lorien Revealed plan.
That's interesting. Well, that is interesting. I do wonder if maybe this deck wants more sloths, because ideally...
Yeah, I was disappointed that it only had 2 sloths, I have to say.
Okay, because part of it is that you can have a depth in play and maybe have your combo in play, but then play out sloths, right?
Instead,
and represent another combo over the top. But why don't you go through your rounds and we can see what we think of the list in practice?
Absolutely, yeah. So round 1, as I said, I sat down and I drew my Submerge and was like, okay, here we go. But it was very amusing because I was playing against someone else borrowing a deck, and in his case, he was coming back to Legacy after a long break and had borrowed a deck from a friend, and he sat down and was like, oh, I haven't played this deck before. We had a really lovely match, But I was very amused at that first juncture because I got to be like, well, I've not even seen the deck that I'm playing. So that was a funny little like bit of one-upmanship on my part as far as the knowledge balance. But no, we had some fun games. The deck that he had borrowed was Blue-Red Delver with Cutter, and that felt pretty reasonable. I mean, I won 2-0 and just got to actually leverage the Hamlet and got to make 2020. And once you have the 2020, I mean, main deck, they have, I think, one answer in Brazen Borrower, which they had a turn to draw and didn't. And then, I mean, they can block, I guess, for a while, but they can't really go as long as you've still got a decent amount of life. And here the Submerges are pretty good. And Submerge is also pretty fun against something like Delver. In fact, this happened. He had 2 Delvers in play, and I got to Submerge one of them, and then the other one didn't flip. So that was satisfying.
Very rude.
Big tempo plays. Submerge 2K26. So yeah, I won that 2-0. Obviously, after board, you're slightly more at risk of getting your 2020 bounced, but unless they have a really fast draw, your stuff interacts quite well, and they only really have Wasteland to interact with your combo.
Yeah. I would say traditionally, tempo decks are a good matchup for depth shells.
Yeah.
Of all varieties.
Yeah. And that doesn't change here, even though maybe having Force of Will is like less good than having other... I don't know.
It's an interesting space. Like, I have played quite a lot of green-black depths, and I've played this list a few times, and I'm always like pretty happy with my tempo matchups. And then you queue into someone playing green-white who would have a better tempo matchup, but say a worse combo matchup. But because they have like Knight of the Reliquary and things, they just absolutely house you in the mirrors. And you're just there like, why are you playing this deck? You're worse against our worst matchup, perhaps. Or like, yeah, you're not necessarily that much better versus your good matchup. It always feels like a personal affront. It's like, you just really want to beat the other depths players.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that's not true.
Back to the topic that we began with there, really. But in round 2, I played against Jamie, not the Jamie whose question we took. I should say my lovely round 1 opponent was Matthew. That was a lot of fun. We talked a lot about classical music after we'd concluded our games. Enjoyed that thoroughly. Jamie, not the same Jamie that asked the question, but another player who's relatively new to the London Legacy scene, which is great. It's really fun having new people coming along to the locals. And he was playing Hogak, green-black, Stitcher's Supplier, White of the Reliquary, Hogak with Bowmasters and stuff. And I think you and he have previous on the Depths Hogak matchup. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast. I did play Turbo Depths at the LLM at the beginning of May, and we played some fun games afterwards. Neither of us made top 8, and we played Hogak versus Turbo Depths. And yeah, they don't have a lot going on that can stop you, and they're not particularly fast, was what I concluded. I don't know what you think, but...
No, I mean, the only ways that they can do stuff is like having an active white and then being able to like fog your 2020 with Talon Gates, or, I mean, in fact, he was very pleased to have the tech of, what is it, Eumidian Hatchery, or whatever it's called?
Yes, I know.
Land that makes 1/1s when you sack it. And so he made a bunch of 1/1 flyers to block my Marit Lage and hopefully crunching for the damage on the crackback, which was a decent plan, but didn't work against Crop Rot into Sigiri Step to give my Marit Lage protection from black. So that's what happened in game 1. And game 2 was, I think, even less balanced. I mean, there was an early-ish Hogak, but I think I had a Sloth, so the Sloth and the Hogak were just sort of staring at each other. And I think I missed a line to make a turn 2 Sloth in this game, to my eternal shame. I should have made a turn 2 Sloth, and I didn't, but I still won. So I won that match 2-0, and I was feeling on top of the world with my borrowed deck. And then, who did I play against then, Francis?
I believe we played then.
That's correct. And what were you playing on Thursday? Spoiler for the rest of the episode, because this is also what you played at the weekend.
I was playing Doomsday with Flow State and the One Ring, which I've enjoyed playing recently. It's been fun.
And you were like, we sat down and you were like, oh no, this is going to be really bad for me. Like, I've built this deck and I don't want to play against it, blah, 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 me. And then you like absolutely crushed me 2-0. Like, not even like remotely close. Although, game one, you did fuck up.
I did mess up, yes.
Extremely funny.
That's true.
Basically, what happened was the dynamic of the matchup, I would say, from my side of the table was like, you played an early Doomsday. I think in game 2 I had the Force, but you had an answer back, and then I just lost to Doomsday because I have Stifle and I had some consigns in the board and stuff, but you can just easily build a pile that duresses me first. And I just don't have the, because the combo needs 3 lands at least in play.
Yeah.
And then another turn, if you just turn, even if your Doomsday isn't until turn 2 or even turn 3, depending on what lands I've got in play, it's just going to be really hard for me to end the game. So that's how the matchup felt. In game 1, you made a duress pile and you duressed me. And what did you see?
I saw you had a crop rotation and a submerge as my legal targets.
And what did you choose?
Well, thinking that submerge, would be a removal spell, and that I could beat that by having 0 devotion, I decided to take your crop rotation because that affords you many other flexible outlets in the deck.
Then what happened?
Well, I put a Thassa's Oracle into play on my following turn.
Yeah.
With no cards in my library.
Yeah.
And there was a trigger on the stack. And then you cast Submerge on my creature. And I sort of failed to realize that obviously if you submerge my creature, then I will have a card in my library. And my devotion would still be 0, which is rather poor planning. I don't think I've ever had to build a Doomsday pile that beats Submerge before, actually, because strangely, people don't often have Submerging against Doomsday.
Yeah, it's weird that. My favorite detail of this is also that you had the Force in hand and you were just like, I did the sort of the mind game, like chuck the Submerge into play and you're like, yeah, haha, sure, whatever. And you like flip the Thassa's Oracle over and then you were like, resolve trigger. And I was like, go ahead. And you were like, oh.
Yeah.
And it was just that moment.
I really wasn't thinking about it. Yeah.
No, you really, and the thing is, I had been thinking about it. Like when you duressed me, I knew that was like my one outer was like you not realizing that was happening. Like I had it in my opening hand and I was like, this is a dead card. Then I was thinking about it more. And I was like, oh no, this like does this exact thing on the combo turn.
Yeah.
And I think that Francis might not think about that because it's like somewhat non-obvious. It just doesn't come up, like you said. Like you put your trigger on the stack and you win. That's how the game works, right? And so the fact that it happened and like, I don't know, I was for sure when you dressed me, I was like, yeah, whatever, they both suck kind of thing. Like, I think I played the part just about well enough.
Yeah, it was very convincing that you'd not thought about it. But
of course, I let you take it back, let you force the card. But also, I think even if I hadn't done that, we could have just passed another turn. I would have attacked you down to 2, and then you'd have just cast Thassa's Oracle again.
Yeah, I think you were just dead either way.
I don't know what my top card was, to be fair. Maybe it was something. I don't know what
I did still have Force of Will. I think if your top card was... If you'd like submerged into submerge, then you would have like killed me, which is quite funny. But I don't think there were many other... I guess submerge into submerge into submerge, because you had a Beanstalk in play, right? So you could like chain through them. But it's not awfully likely. But yes, egg on face for me. I think I was scared of the matchup because the deck has 4 main deck Stifle, 4 main deck Force of Will. You do have a combo that I can't interact with early. So if I have a hand, there's a lot of cantrips, which I think I still keep. But if I do have that sort of hand, you can race me without my forces doing anything. And then post-board, you have Consigns, a Fluster, 2 Force of Negation, 2 Surgical Extraction. So there's a lot of irritating like things for me to play around. It's quite difficult to build piles. That was what I was worried about more than
I think
you
that's
being fast.
Fair to an extent, but you're saying that you can't interact with my combo, except that one of the best ways for me to assemble my combo is with crop rotation, which obviously Forcible does interact with. So it's like, it's not like you have no interaction. It's, you can't interact maybe with the natural drawn, like Yavimaya stage depth draw, but you're much better placed to combo quickly than I am, basically.
Which is what happened. Like,
which is 100% what happened.
Both my hands had like a turn 2 Doomsday, basically, where I had to pass, but...
Also, I think you won the die roll, so...
I think I did, which...
Yeah,
again,
I lost every die roll,
good.
I think. Me.
Yeah, it's part of playing Sloth Depths. You're a bit slow.
Of course.
You don't get quite... Yeah,
silly me, yeah.
You have a lower initiative value, or whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah.
You're not an Eldar. Yeah.
The Sloth has to take every other turn off.
Yeah.
My last round, I played against Phil on Big Breakfast, as we talked about in episode 9, I think, was Big Breakfast episode.
An Eternal Horizons deck. Big Breakfast.
An Eternal Horizons deck, yeah. Which Phil also, I mean, we should note, we mentioned the ELMQ at the start of the episode. Phil won that ELMQ with Big Breakfast, so fresh off that, he was running it back at the local. And again, similar vibe actually to the Doomsday matchup is like, well, I don't have loads of interaction. I have crop rotation for Bajuka Bog, but again, like crop rotation, it doesn't feel very good to play against the like 4 Force 2 Days deck. Well, how many days does Big Breakfast have? I can't remember.
I think Phil's playing 2 days in Big Breakfast.
Yeah, I think so, because I did get dazed in that matchup. Again, I lost 0-2. And to be honest, I think 2-2 is about the right record for Sloth Depths at the local. That felt very... I was very happy with that as a result, and as an evening, I had a lot of fun. So thank you for putting that together for me to muck about with. It was a nice change of pace from playing Painter.
Yeah, I thought you'd enjoy it. There's a lot of sequencing, and there's also a combo and a lot of classic cards in it, but also some silly ones. It's like a nice little...
Nice balance.
Yeah, smorgasbord of cards.
We've mentioned 2 things already, which are your Doomsday deck and the Big Breakfast deck. Well, also your deck, but the one that Phil won the ELM qualifier with. Do you have a preference as to which direction we go first? Do you want to just touch on Big Breakfast and then talk about Doomsday? If there's anything you'd like to say about Big Breakfast, I don't know.
Other than, congratulations to Phil.
Absolutely.
Carrying the torch for Big Breakfast and Eternal Horizons, although I don't think he's listened to an episode yet, which is bizarre. Asking questions.
I think he did listen to the question episode.
Okay. I'm just calling him out, to be honest. He deserves it. No, Phil's lovely. And I'm excited to see him at the playing at the ELM. That will be really cool.
Me too. Big props to Phil.
I'm glad he's been enjoying playing the deck. So it's an interesting deck, though, because I think I designed it before Flow State was spoiled as I want a way to draw cards in Breakfast that doesn't draw cards. And then they printed a different card, which does a very similar thing, perhaps better in a more classic Breakfast shell, which I haven't explored yet, but it is on my to-do list.
Yeah, Stock Up versus Flow State is an interesting one. Obviously, Stock Up digs deeper and asks less of you, except that it asks you to pay an extra mana. So I don't know whether, Ancient Tomb is such a good card that maybe you're still happy to be, I don't know. I think definitely worth exploring Flow State and Breakfast, which you said you're planning to do. So
yeah, I think I'm more comfortable playing Flow State in like a blue-white build, right? You aren't contorting your mana base quite so much to play Flow State, so you can afford to play like blue-white with an Underground Sea and Undercity Sewers for your Cabal Therapy Dread Return. And that means you get all your white removal back and you get your nomads back and things like that. So I'm sure somebody else has done this already. This is not a secret.
Yeah, it seems likely.
I just haven't looked into it yet. I have been focusing elsewhere on my Flow States because obviously the deck to beat briefly has been Tron, and what better way to beat Tron than by killing them on turn 1? So why don't we talk about Doomsday?
Very nice segue. Let's talk about Doomsday. Tell me about, because we talked about this a little, I guess it was last week, there was this Legacy Cup event at the Spotlight Series. And for anyone that doesn't know, Spotlight Series is basically what GPs are called these days, as far as I can gather. And you wanted to play the Legacy Cup, and you weren't sure what to play for it. And you sort of were thinking, yeah, like you just described, Tron, how do I beat that? Let's play Doomsday. But there's a lot of scope for making decisions about Doomsday builds. There are quite a few different builds. Do you want to talk about what your thought process was?
Yeah, I think initially I actually wanted to play Weldercam, like the painter deck. And I tried playing a challenge and queued into Tron twice.
Yeah, I remember this. You texted me, you were like, I've just dropped to O2 after playing Tron twice.
Yeah, it was horrible. The first spell cast against me in the challenge was Calm on turn 2 on the play for them. And I was like, okay, I don't think... And then and I thought, okay, well, let's just lose round 1 and win out. And then I played against Tron again. And I was like, all right, well, something's in the water here. We're not going to play Painter for a little bit. And... yeah, I wanted to think about how to play Flow State in Doomsday. So yes, there are, I suppose, at the moment, 2 more popular builds. One is a bug build, playing Witherbloom Charm, which is another new card, which tends to be, I suppose, what people would think of as a turbo deck. It's a dedicated Doomsday shell. And then there's a tempo shell, which is playing... like Tamiyo and Baragoy and Murktide Regent in the main deck and in various numbers. So you're splitting, they might play a couple of Wastelands, and that tends to be blue-black, no splash color. So those are the 2, I would say, more normal builds that you can find results for. There was a list that won a challenge in April, which is a 4-color build, which I think draws direct inspiration from a deck that Mark Tobias played at... might be Eternal Weekend 2023 Europe. Now I think he top 8'd, which is based around playing with the One Ring and playing Teferi Time Raveler, which I find attractive, but I hate the mana base. So,
yeah, it sounds dreadful.
It's like no basic lands. You're trying to cast a triple black spell and Teferi and Veil of Summer. Why not?
That deck, whisper it, deserves to get Blood Mooned.
I would agree. No, I don't like that deck at all for those reasons, but I do like playing with the One Ring in Doomsday. I think having more ways to generate busted opening hands is great. And part of the problem with playing Doomsday is you can't always find it. And the games where you don't find Doomsday, you just lose. So playing with Personal Tutor is a way to solve this. People at the moment are just playing Flow State as a way to solve it. You just see lots of cards. But the other way to do it is to play something else to play with your Dark Rituals. And I think playing the One Ring is pretty good in that slot. And then that often will buy you protection. It can find you your Doomsday eventually. So if your whole deck is interaction and you resolve a One Ring, you can quite often just stop your opponent from killing you and draw 7 cards or something over a few turns.
Plus, then it draws into your pile as well, which is...
right.
nice.
So it also specifically solves situations like your hand is Doomsday and a card, and your opponent has lethal in play. And the only way to kill there, unless you have Deep Analysis in your deck to make a pile that wins on the spot with a cantrip as that A card, is to just, I can play the One Ring, I'll fog, I'll draw a card, I'll untap, I'll play Doomsday, and then draw 2 cards. And your board of creatures just doesn't matter. And you can't make plays like that without the ring in your deck. It is... I think many people would say it's pretty broken, and I would probably agree. It's a really silly card. So, yeah, you can play it really quickly. It's a great use to... Also, another problem with this deck is you sometimes just draw a bunch of Dark Rituals, and if you only have Doomsday in your deck, all your Dark Rituals are like just mulligans. Whereas if you are able to use it otherwise, that, again, makes your hands much more balanced.
I guess that's true of Baragoyf as well, though, right?
Yeah. So this is a Dimir build of that 4-color deck, which is more of a control deck. And I've sort of swapped out the Veils for discard and whatnot. Baragoyf, I thought would be a great idea, and I have been playing it up until this point as a sideboard Duke against Tempo. However, that has been a lot less successful than I would warrant for how many slots it takes. So I'm actually finding I win... I don't think I've won a single game with my creature pivot out of the sideboard, which is in this list, even versus Tempo, and I just win with Doomsday.
Do you think that's because Tempo already has to be able to beat Baragoyf, essentially, because other tempo decks are playing Baragoyf.
I would agree. I think also, like, there are 3 tempo decks, and they are all differently positioned against Baragoyf. And I think the ones that play Tamiyo are much better at managing Baragoyf than the ones that don't. Because they can afford to give up resources to manage your Baragoyf and then recruit them later and keep playing a game. They can afford to have a couple of deck cards in their deck because they're drawing so many cards. That sort of thing. So there's a blue-black deck and a blue-white deck. Both of those play ample answers to Baragoyf if they want them and sculpting to find them. The blue-red deck is by far the one. I'm not even going to say... Actually, going into this, I would have thought that the blue-red deck is a worse matchup than either of those because of how aggressive it is, and Corey Steelclutch is very difficult to beat. And so Baragoyf's much better there, but the blue-black deck has a lot of discard, and that's an Orcish Bowmasters, and the blue-white deck has seemingly 8 Stifles post-board. They're playing like 4 Stifle or 4 Consigned Memory or some mixture of those. I don't know exactly what the list is for their Felia Riddler deck. And that's also horrible. So I don't quite know what to do. I don't think the creatures are quite good enough, and I've actually been thinking about playing no creatures and just playing defense grids. But that's a whole different... That's a whole different thing. So,
I mean, how do you like the ring into things like Bowmasters? Like, does that move the needle on where you come down on the ring? Because other than that, you sound very high on the ring.
So the ring, I think, is fine. This is Bowmasters. It obviously, like, it becomes pretty untenable if they have multiple Bowmasters, and that's quite difficult to manage. But usually you can do the fog draw 1, draw 2 thing with the Bowmasters in play and
because it won't kill you straight away.
Yeah, and often you can, if you're resolving Doomsday at some point during that, you can still win. Or you can resolve Doomsday and then play a ring and then get protection and then draw cards. Like, depends on where you are in the game. That's been okay. Ring, I find, is underwhelming in the matchups that I think are already good for you. So things like other combo decks or Karn decks, right? Decks that can kill you through your trigger with, I don't know. Like, if I play against Sneak and Show, I just don't really want the One Ring in my deck. Like, it's too expensive. Sure. I just want all the interaction, right? And you're a Force Days discard deck with a turn 1 kill. Like, you don't need to be doing that in that matchup. And Flow State really helps you sculpt those hands well, where maybe the ring is too clunky, that sort of thing. So,
yeah, because you're playing both Flow State and the ring, to be clear. How have you found Flow State to be so far? Impressed?
I think Flow State has come off worse than I initially thought it would be. I thought it would be really broken, and it is merely very good, I think is where I'm landing on it. You have to work to turn it on. It is some amount of work, but usually by turn like 3, 4, 5, you're going to have it online. But the format is a lot faster maybe than when Expressive Iteration was legal, although Initiative was legal then also, so make of that what you will. But you can't often afford to wait, basically, to set up your flow states in games, especially versus things that just try and jam threats at you turn 1, 2, 3. It's quite clunky there. But maybe EI was clunky there as well. But I've been impressed.
But I mean, to be clear, Flow State is seeing plenty of play. It's not like it's done nothing. I mean, the blue-black tempo
definitely
has picked it up and seems good with it.
No, I think the jury's out on whether it's too good or not. It could still be too good. I think perhaps what I find game to game is that Tamiyo draws more cards than Flow State on average, and it still feels worse. I would every time rather face Flow State than Tamiyo, for example.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Sloth Depths briefly, Tamiyo was absolutely horrific to play against. Just like there was just no way around it, really.
Yeah, very tired of that card. But
yeah, Tamiyo is maybe too good. Who could say? How about the stated aim of beating Tron? Is that working? I assume it is. I don't see what Tron does against Doomsday.
I didn't face it in the Spotlight series, which I'm not going to go through it all round by round because there's a funny... Well, I could talk through my round by round.
You could talk through it round by round. It's not going to be very long.
I didn't play very many rounds at the Spotlight series. I had a round 1 bye. I won rounds 2 and 3 versus Turbo Reanimator and Blue White. Felia Riddler. And then I ID'd twice. And then the top 8 split. And so I barely played any Magic.
And you walked away with what?
I basically got 2 boxes of Magic. Like,
so you won 2 rounds total, and you walked away with 2 boxes. That's a pretty good return.
1 box per round. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd play that local.
It was pretty good. But I have played against Tron online several times, and the matchup is very, very, very good. I don't know, 70% or something, 75% going to win. It's like, obviously they can win, you can have duff hands, and they can jam cards and lock you out, or have a bunch of Cosmos commands that you can't quite answer all of them. That sort of thing can happen, but it's very easy to beat one Cosmos command. They have very little interaction early. You just cut your rings and bring in more interaction. There's not much they can do, I would say. So it's really good.
Yeah, no, great. I mean, I like that as a kind of coda to the discussion that we had at the start of the episode about how to beat a metagame. I mean, you know, you were fed up of losing to Tron, so you built a deck that would definitely beat Tron and also has game against the rest of the thing. You know, that's one way to go about it for sure. Do you think you're going to keep playing Doomsday?
Yeah, I mean, I usually have a phase of playing it about once a year because I play several decks. I did play it exclusively as my main deck for about 2 years at one point, but it is... So I sort of come in and out of being au fait with playing it well, and I feel a bit rusty, so I'd like to play it some more. I might play it in Hasselt. I'm trying to work out what to play there. It's 2 months away. It's a proxy event, so people will be able to play 4 Candelabras.
Relevant.
Right. That sort of thing. And I'm not overly confident with anything else, and this has been winning quite a lot for me. I played 2 leagues after I got back from the Spotlight, and I went 4-1 and then trophied. I was like, okay. And I lost to Grindstone Cowboy on Demir Tempo in the last round of the first league, and then I beat him, or beat them, I don't actually know who they are. I beat them in the second league. I was like, justice! Beat the Demir Tempo player.
Grindstone Cowboy playing Demir Tempo is a sad, sad state of affairs. That's all I'll say on the matter.
I have them pegged as a Cephalid Breakfast player, but again...
It's a great username, Grindstone Cowboy.
It is a good name. Yeah.
I like it a lot. Props for that one. Cool. I think that about wraps it up, unless you've got anything to add.
No, I think that covers everything. I'm looking forward to playing more Magic.
In the meantime, that is the end of episode 11 of Eternal Horizons. We'll be back soon. Thank you very much for listening. Please do follow us on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcasts, and leave us a comment or a rating if you are so inclined. Thanks very much, Francis. It's been a pleasure as always. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.